Hey, everybody, get this. On September 19th, 1985, Mexico City was hit by one of the deadliest earthquakes in its history. Exactly 32 years later, to the day, September 19th in 2017, another large earthquake hit Mexico City. And then again, 5 years later, on the same exact day, September 19th in 2022, another large earthquake. So, what is going on here? So, why are these earthquakes happening on September 19th? Well, to talk about that, let's talk about two other things that I think you need to know about first. So, the first thing we need to talk about is the seismicity or the amount of earthquakes that occur in Mexico. To understand that, we have to talk a little bit about plate tectonics. So, the surface of the earth is actually covered by a crust, kind of like the candy shell of an M&M, and that crust is broken into pieces, and those pieces are called plates. Now, those plates aren't static; they don't sit in the same place. They move around very slowly, but they move around and they bump into each other. And when they bump or slide past each other, that's what creates earthquakes. And so in Mexico City, or actually off the coast of Mexico, you have one very large plate, the Pacific plate, colliding with the North American plate. And when those plates come together, you get earthquakes, particularly on that border right there where you have two plates that are actually butting into each other. You have a lot of seismic activity. So Mexico actually experiences about 20,000 earthquakes per year. Now, most of those earthquakes are pretty small and not even felt, but not all of them. So the other thing that we need to talk about, number two, is we need to talk about the geology of Mexico City. So the Mexico City was founded on an island in the middle of a lake. Now, over time, that lake was drained of all of its water, but the city continued to expand. And so the majority of Mexico City is built on top of dry lake sediments. Most of that stuff is soft clay and sand. And when you have earthquakes, they release a large amount of seismic energy. And this energy radiates from the epicenter, the center of the earthquake, outward. And when it crosses over these soft sediments, it actually amplifies the earthquake energy and causes more shaking and intensity to increase. You can see that in this simulation from New York Times, which is really great, that just shows as soon as those waves or that energy crosses into the dry lake bed sediments, it actually amplifies the effect or the shaking that happens from the earthquake. So that means that Mexico City actually experiences worse earthquakes than other areas around it. And it means that even if an earthquake doesn't occur that close to it, it can still have a lot of damage and feel a lot of shaking. And that's the case with the earthquake that happened in 1985. It was 200 miles away to the west, but it still caused so much damage and loss of life in Mexico City because of the amplification of those waves. So, what do you do if you live in Mexico City? Well, Mexico City has learned a lot from these experiences. They've done a lot of things that actually help mitigate earthquake damage. They totally revised their building codes, and they also retrofitted older buildings to withstand the shaking of earthquakes better than before. They also have earthquake drills every September 19th to prepare for potential earthquakes and make sure everybody knows what to do. Right after one of those drills on September 19th, they actually had a large earthquake in 2022. The other thing is that they have a very robust monitoring system now for seismic activity and an early warning system that gives them up to 60 seconds advance notice, which could definitely help to save lives. So when we go back and we look at these earthquakes and when they occur, there's actually no month in the year that sees more earthquakes than another. So there's no statistical significance to the month of the year and the number of earthquakes or the magnitude of earthquakes. So there's really no numbers to back up the fact that maybe September is earthquake month or September is when you experience more earthquakes. So the reality of the situation is probably just that it was coincidence, but that coincidence occurred because you have so many earthquakes that are happening all the time, and because Mexico City is very sensitive to earthquakes. So, if you live in Mexico City, do you need to be ready for a big earthquake every September 19th? Well, maybe not, but it couldn't hurt to be prepared.